My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 35 years old, and I've worked as a private nurse for nearly 10 years. Caring for people has always been more than a job to me. I've learned that some wounds can be treated with medicine, while others live quietly inside the heart. 2 years ago, I accepted a position caring for Richard Hayes, a 71-year-old businessman who lived in a large estate outside Portland, Oregon. Richard had suffered a severe stroke the previous year. Although his mind remained sharp, his left side was weak, and he needed help with almost everything. Every weekday, I arrived at 8 in the morning to help him get dressed, prepare breakfast, and guide him through his daily therapy. Despite his illness, Richard never complained. He often thanked me for even the smallest things, and his kindness made my work easier. His wife, Sophia, was 39, elegant, and always perfectly dressed. When I first met her, I admired how caring she appeared. Every morning she entered Richard's room carrying fresh flowers. "Good morning, sweetheart," she would say before kissing his forehead. Richard's tired face always brightened the moment he saw her. "You look beautiful today," he often told her. She smiled warmly, held his hand for a minute or two, then glanced at her phone. "I have to meet the accountant." "Oh, I'm heading to the gym." Sometimes it was lunch with friends. Sometimes it was visiting her mother. There was always somewhere else she needed to be. Richard never questioned her. He simply smiled and wished her a good day. Watching him trust her so completely reminded me how deeply he loved his wife. Still, little things slowly began to trouble me. Sophia spent more time looking at her phone than speaking with Richard. Whenever a message appeared, her face lit up with a smile she never showed during their conversations. One afternoon, while Richard was resting, I walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. Sophia was standing near the back door with her phone pressed to her ear. "I miss you too," she whispered. "I'll leave in a few minutes. Richard is asleep, and the nurse is here." She laughed softly. "I can't wait to see you." I stopped walking. The voice I heard wasn't meant for a husband. Before I could step away, Sophia turned around and saw me. For a second, panic crossed her face. Then she forced a smile. "You didn't hear anything, did you?" I hesitated before quietly answering, "No. It was a lie." She nodded with relief, grabbed her purse, and hurried out of the house. The rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. Should I tell Richard? If I spoke without proof, he might believe his wife instead of me. I also feared losing my job. More importantly, I worried that someone else might replace me and not care for him the way he deserved. So I stayed silent. A few evenings later, fate made the decision for me. On my way home, my car began making strange noises, so I pulled into the parking lot of a small Italian restaurant. As I reached for my phone, I noticed a familiar black SUV parked near the entrance. It belonged to Sophia. Curious, I looked through the restaurant window. She sat across from a young man, laughing in a way I had never seen at home. He reached across the table and held her hand. A moment later, they kissed. My heart sank. There was no misunderstanding anymore. Richard's wife was living a second life while he waited for her at home, believing every excuse she told him. I drove home that night with tears in my eyes, wondering how long a good man could keep loving someone who had already stopped loving him. The next morning, I walked into Richard's room as usual. "Good morning, Hannah," he said with a gentle smile. But after a few seconds, he looked closely at my face. Something is wrong. I tried to smile. I'm fine. He slowly shook his head. No, you're not. And you're a terrible liar. His words caught me by surprise. He reached for my hand. Hannah, everyone thinks I'm too old or too sick to notice what's happening around me. But I still know when someone is hiding the truth from me. I lowered my eyes. If you know something about Sophia, please tell me. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I remembered the lonely man who waited every morning for a wife who no longer loved him. He deserved honesty. I saw her, I whispered. She was having dinner with another man. They were holding hands, and they kissed. Richard closed his eyes. He didn't cry. He simply nodded, as though part of him had expected the answer all along. A few minutes later, Sophia entered carrying her usual bouquet of flowers. "Good morning, my love." She leaned forward to kiss Richard, but he quietly turned his face away. She looked confused. "Richard, what's wrong?" He stared at the flowers for a moment. "Did you buy these after leaving the gym, or after dinner with your boyfriend?" The color disappeared from her face. "What are you talking about?" "Please," Richard said calmly. "Don't insult me with another lie." Sophia looked at me with anger. "You told him." Before I could answer, Richard spoke firmly. "Leave Hannah out of this. She showed me the honesty you never could." Sophia's expression changed from anger to frustration. "I've been lonely," she admitted. "You spend every day in this bed. I still have my whole life ahead of me." Richard nodded sadly. "I understand that living with a sick husband isn't easy. If you wanted to leave, I would have accepted a divorce." He looked directly into her eyes. "But you chose betrayal instead." The room fell silent. Finally, Richard pointed toward the door. "Our marriage ended the day I started lying to me. Please leave." Without another word, Sophia picked up her purse and walked away. 6 months have passed since that morning. Richard divorced Sophia and focused on rebuilding his life. His recovery has been slow, but his spirit is stronger than before. Sometimes we sit in the garden after his therapy sessions, drinking tea and talking about life. One afternoon he smiled and said, "Losing the wrong person made room for the right people." I smiled back because I knew he wasn't talking about another wife. He meant honest friendships, loyal caregivers, and the peace that comes from living without lies. That experience taught me something I will never forget. Kindness should never mean protecting deception. Sometimes telling the truth hurts, but allowing someone to live inside a lie hurts far more. Real love is built on honesty, and without honesty, even the most beautiful promises eventually fall apart.